to move my.
We are live.
We're live, Senate Appropriations, February 26th. We're going over FY26 budget requests. And today, not DMV. I almost said DMV. It's Buildings and General Services. So I'll let you introduce yourselves for the record.
Great. Good afternoon. Thank you. It's really an honor to be here. I'm Wanda Manoli. I'm the Commissioner of Buildings and General Services. Just briefly, I've had a delightful journey of almost 40 years with the state. We'll keep the 40 as brief. But it's really been, I've been very fortunate to work with some, great, really phenomenal leaders and have wonderful mentors. In October 14th, to be exact, I was provided an opportunity and left the Department of Motor Vehicle and became Commissioner of the Department of Buildings and General Services. Prior to my time at DMV, I had spent almost 20 years at Buildings and General Services, serving as the Principal Assistant and the Deputy Commissioner. I thought it was going to be a pretty easy transition, and change is a good thing, and things have changed. So in the last 4 months, I'm aligning myself. I'm, resetting, aligning, and I've made a commitment to the team. I won't go back to what I knew. I'll look at where we are today on policies and procedures, and some things maybe need to be realigned, some things may not. So I consider myself a newbie. So go gentle, please, during the questioning. If I could,
40-year veteran newbie.
Yeah, that's right. I'm taking it. I'm asking for it. I may not get it, but and Senator, I did try to put BGS's budget on a sheet, but it doesn't work. So I was able to always put DMV's budget on one sheet and be able to take you through everything. And just, even though I asked Jason to do that, he goes, it can't happen. But I'd like to introduce my team.
Okay, good.
And I'll let them introduce, Emily Kaziski, I'll start, is my deputy. I'm really honored to have Emily join me. I'm not sure if any of you have had the opportunity to work with Emily in the past, but Emily actually, while she was waiting to take her bar, she was serving as a committee staff person in House institutions. Mm-hmm. And Michael Bahowski and I had the opportunity of working with Emily, and just saw a brilliant mind. And so we engaged her and asked her to come work at BG. I almost said DMV Senator at BGS. And she worked on some of the, I'll let her talk about it. But she stayed with us. She journeyed over to DFR, and I was able to bring her back as my deputy. But if you just want to highlight that, because I'm pretty proud of her.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yes, I am a recovering attorney. And when I moved back to Vermont and had to take the bar here, I worked here in the Institutions Committee during the session, which was wonderful. And allowed me to get really familiar in that way with the legislative process, allowed me to meet the commissioner and work at BPS for a few years, and spent the intervening 10 years as the Department of Financial Regulation. I've interacted with some of them in that capacity. I was most recently their director of policy. And then I joined BGS alongside Commissioner Manoli in mid-December, so I am also a newbie. I'm not new to BGS, but a lot has changed in the last 10 years, so I'm also getting up to speed and loving it.
Great, welcome.
And then Cole Barney is Communication and Legislative Liaison, and Cole had joined me at DMV. I think you were there for about 4 weeks.
Yes.
And he came over, but Cole actually worked in the governor's office in the communication
Central Services office,
which is a great fit for DMV customer service, but also BGS. But Cole, I think I like telling his story too. He's a native Vermonter. He got his master's degree at Norwich, local, and he's committed to state government.
Yes. I am completely new at PGS.
So, and with that, and thank you for giving me the opportunity, I'm gonna, let Jason, introduce his financial team and
Yes,
our partnership, and
Thank
then
you.
we'll get going. How's
so I
that?
don't have a big speech like them, but Jason Pinard, I'm the Deputy Chief Financial Officer for the Agency Administration Financial Services Division, and one of our clients is Buildings and General Services, so we work in conjunction with Wanda and her team to build the budgets on a yearly basis. We also have Harmony Wilder, and she's our financial director, who was part of building the budget as well. I don't know if Holly's online, but it doesn't look like it. So I guess it's just us two right now, so.
You know, and I'm gonna give a quick shout out to Harmony. Harmony actually worked at BGS, and we brought her in from Department of Labor, by my memory.
Labor and Corrections.
Labor and Corrections, and she actually set up our fleet program and really made some investments in, that program and some of the strategies and the policies, so.
Well, I guess, I keep thinking I want to ask you a DMV question. Who's running the fleet program now?
Stacy.
Harmony, no, I'm just kidding.
Because we were talking, or at least I was talking about
Yeah.
wanting to ask the chair of transportation to have a new fleet manager.
So Stacy is a new mother and she is on family leave right now, so, but if you want us to come in, we'll figure out a great way to bring that forward to you for the committee, just let me know, okay? So with that, there it is, and if we can get going, so I, just highlighting for the committee, and you may be familiar with this, our mission is to provide facilities and general services for all state agencies and the departments to accomplish their goals. And I've added, including our partnerships with Vermont businesses, because the vendor community, as you will see, and procurement and construction, that's under us, that's under our jurisdiction. So partnering with them to make sure, as we change things, as we modernize, as we're looking at policy, that they're on board and it makes sense to them. And then, of course, we always strive to be friendly and responsive, but this is really, you know, the vision and the mission. It's communication, customer service, being customer centric. Next slide. So these are just some bubbles on what the budget allows us to do, and I'm not going to read them to you. So we operate and maintain 3 million square feet of rentable space. We actually have 4 million square feet of goods in our inventory, and I'll get to it a little bit later, but I'm just going to highlight this one. So right now we're at about an 8.4% vacancy on our rental use. And a big chunk of that is actually the Zampier building that some of you may be familiar with that we're not occupying anymore. But those numbers fluctuate, and this is, but this is in our book of business. Security is a big piece of us, safety and security. This is really about the systems, it's about the people. I think, you know, in Waterbury, in some locations like Waterbury and Montpelier, we have security staff. We are not sworn officers, they are security staff. They manage parking lots, certain buildings. But the biggest book of business is really around safety, which goes into security. So we're always looking at the cameras, the card system. We do evaluations when an employee we may need to provide some protection of that employee because they're in the office. Maybe there's a domestic violence or there's something going on. So we're always working with the departments in those areas and enhancing. We get our equipment money in the capital bill, but the program is the overall program is run through our general appropriation.
Are you in 133 now? Where did you
Yes.
move to?
Yeah, they wouldn't let me keep my office at 120. I tried. No, I'm just kidding. So I think the other piece, what's interesting, I think for most of you, you know, you've been fortunate to be working in the state for a long time, and you know, the biggest part of our department, and we'll talk about it, but just in the overview, is our maintenance and custodial staff. You're gonna see, I think that's about 70%, 75% of our FTEs. And they are, as you well know, they're providing multiple different layers of service, and they're statewide.
How many are employees and how many are contractors?
In our custodial,
Yeah,
we do contracts for most of our lease space, but our state buildings, for the most part, I always put the caveat, there might be one building that I'm just not aware of. 4 months, Senator.
yeah, but they're all state employees.
But we do have I think we have 2 standard contracts with cleaning companies throughout the state, because of lease space or location, or maybe we might have a office, supporting, it might be a state program, and we have a few people in that. And we'll use janitorial services instead of assigning a full-time equivalent to, 300 square feet. So moving right along, because I'm sensitive to time as well. This is the BGS budget summary, the highlights, and we're comprised of 7 divisions. We have 334 FTEs. We currently have 31 vacancies. The bulk of those vacancies are in our design, construction unit, and maintenance and custodial. And we have an overall of our budget of a 2.5% increase. But as we go through each of the divisions really quickly, we're going to see some sections much higher than others, but the balance is 2.5. Our budget to meet the 3% is really based on vacancy savings, projected vacancy savings, and we were just looking at what is the normal flow of the vacancy savings so we could meet our targets. And the increases are COLAs, insurance, all of the standard things that you've heard from everyone else. There's no surprises in our budget. There's no new systems. But it's really operation. It's personal services and operations of what we're delivering. The budget, just really quickly, I think you may know this, but we have general fund, transportation fund, special fund, internal service funds, and interdepartmental transfers. And that's how the overall budget is made up. And this pie chart just gives you a breakdown of that. Any questions? So in your presentation, we have the crosswalks, but I'm not going to walk you through those unless you want to reference them, if that's okay.
You're not going through
I'm summarizing the
yes, summarize the crosswalk.
I'm summarizing. I'm not going to walk you. I'm not going to walk you through the crosswalk.
Yeah.
So the commissioner's office, the overview, we have a 3% increase. Our budget is $1.3 million, and all of the increase are steps, COLAs, insurance, and that is the budget. There's not a whole lot there. And that's the wrong one. And we didn't have, in this budget, we did calculate a vacancy savings turnover just through natural attrition and ebb and flow.
Yep.
So the next budget, or the next piece, is design and construction, which is engineering. This is $4.8 million. It's a 2.5 increase from 25. The increase really is reflected because we had 2 vacant positions that were in property management that we moved over to design and construction. This team was affected probably the most in deliverables to customers between COVID and the flooding in Montpelier. So the capital construction budget, these 23 FTEs really manage all of those projects, and the focus was moved to Montpelier. And when you look at our performance measures, you can see from 23 and 24, there's almost a 50% decline, and in projects that we completed. And that was really because of the work shifting. So our goal for 25 is to get back up to 100. I've been working with the director and we're reprioritizing. We aligned our capital bill request on projects, on cash flow, so we could be more successful, but not delaying any of the high priorities. Do you have any questions here? The next budget that we'll just do an overview on is in government business services. This is the information centers. And our recommended budget is 5.6 million, and we get 80% of that from the T fund. Is it 80%?
No.
Sorry.
Well, it's 85, yeah, 84 or 16, sorry, yeah. I'm being more exact.
Okay, I'm the estimate and he's the exact, okay? And so you're familiar with this, but this is BGS staffs and operates all of the Vermont Information Centers that are along the highway and in communities. And you know, that program, I'll just go to this because I can start getting excited. You know, 2.5 million visitors. And this is real data. It is tracked on how they come into the building, how they operate. We've changed the hours significantly. At one time, I think before COVID, we probably had some locations that were open 12 and 24 hours. If I remember, Guilford used to operate 24/7. It's customer service. It's one of the most customer services groups that we have. They're greeting everybody, the traveling public. It aligns with transportation about safe and secure on the highway. And this, so this program has a 3.4% increase. And
Can
one
you
of
give me
the,
an update on the most important visitor center?
so that, the most important visitor center, so I think it's, so the Montpelier Information Center, the central office was the building, we can't use it right now, because it was affected by the flood. It's one of the 5 properties that we have in downtown, in the Capitol complex that's not there. That office was Central Vermont, and it supported the operations of this whole unit. And now some people are in the commissioner's office, but it also supported Central Vermont, you know, Barre, Montpelier, Berlin. And we're trying to figure out where does it go? Because the central services was really the administration and the brochure program. And then we had this wonderful visitor center that was open 7 days a
And
week.
you ran a fleet office out of there too. So
Yeah, and the fleet office is now at the Green Mountain.
so everything's just up.
Yeah, I think, so everything is gone. I started this position and there were some, you know, some people thinking that maybe we were gonna be doing something different in partnership in downtown Montpelier.
Right.
I asked not to at this time because I didn't have the staff. I really need to pause and look at what the mission is and what is the future vision. Because if we are central, you know, central Vermont and serving Northfield and Barre and Montpelier, how can I bring that into that center a little bit differently than what was there? If we have to rebuild it, what does it look like? Are there different partnerships that I can engage in with those communities? Because they all have events.
Yeah,
And so that is on my list. I just don't have an answer yet.
okay. And then what, those 5 buildings, what's the status of those?
So we are still in the process of doing all of our applications and actually I have Emily working on this. Can you give the quick overview of where we are with FEMA?
Yeah, so we are in the throes of finalizing our application for rebuild and mitigation. That should be finalized within the coming months. We're looking at different options. So right now there isn't a decision point on exactly what will be moving forward, but we'll have a host of options that we anticipate talking to to the legislature about, when we get to that point. But essentially, there will be a combination of, mitigation, for future flood resiliency. There will be some rebuild, and there could be some properties that again are left open or removed
Yeah.
for mitigation purposes.
And I think that's one of the things that I've learned in the last few months about the result of, I was here when we rebuilt Waterbury, but Montpelier and these particular assets and FEMA and really that flood mitigation and the river. And so it is a different project than just rebuilding and trying to figure out like how we reused Waterbury. It's coming at it from many different approaches.
Yeah, and we're coordinating closely with the chief recovery officer, central flood recovery office for the administration. And we also have a contractor, Guidehouse, who's helping us navigate the FEMA process, which is complex.
And are you working with the Montpelier, with the commission, the like flood recovery commission?
So I have met with them once, Senator, and I think everyone wants to know what we're doing.
Yeah.
And that's what I don't
feedback,
have, because we're not there. But what I have said is we have to look at, I can't tell you, are we lifting the buildings? Are we gonna we just don't know. I can't tell you what the site's gonna look like for the mitigation because we don't know. We've just finally, I think, wrapped up the inventory of, go ahead.
Oh yeah, we've been in the assessment and inventory stage.
Yeah.
Has been quite a heavy lift for BGS staff. And it's, again, with the FEMA processes, it's quite detailed, the level of information that needs to be provided on a line by line basis. So there's been a monumental effort getting that together. It's crossing the finish line, which is really exciting for us. And again, we're in those final stages of having options that will be up for consideration.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, and we do bi-weekly meetings. I just want you to know with the governor and all of the partners, and I do know that Pat Moulton is a part of that. And I know she's been working as part of those discussions, and she's actually joining in on those meetings. Okay. So just a quick, if I can, on information centers. I think one of the things that I like to talk about is that we are directed that 40%. So one of the questions everyone keeps asking me, so I'm bringing the question to you, is with the brochure program and what we have out there, can we measure what the increased revenue is because of it for the Vermont businesses that buy into the brochure program? So the answer is no. But what I learned from that, and I thought is important to share, is that we have some guidelines, and so we charge for the brochure program, and we charge for the panels. So if you go into the information centers and it's advertisement, 40% of our advertising space that we've designated is free for promotional displays for 600 businesses, which I didn't realize, and I just think and then we focus regionally and we focus on the space that they're in. And the brochure program pays for that, essentially. So it's really a great program. The next slide is purchasing and contracting. This is a $3.1 million budget. This is a mix of general and interdepartmental transfers. We have 15 full-time positions. This budget is a 10.7% increase from 25. We are fully staffed. So we were carrying vacancy savings last year and using those. So we are fully staffed in this program, which reflects the increase. And I just want to say there's some really creative work that's going on here in purchasing and contracting with OPC and with design and engineer. And that was really a result of the result of a flood, which isn't a positive thing to say, but we created retainer contracts in the state of Vermont in categories. So, up to $750,000. So for us to advance our work and to manage everything that we need to do, we have category contracts that, we go out to bid for, and they're good for 2 years. These retainer contracts, and so the process is that our project managers have a list of pre-approved, providers, and they're able to go in and get estimates from them in advanced projects without having, because we developed the RFP on the category of service instead of the specific job. And it's been very successful. Any questions on that budget? Postal services, it's a $1 million budget. It's a mix of general and internal service funds. It's a 2.9% increase over 25. The common question that I've been asked is, where is it located? And the postal center is in Middlesex. And then, is there still a deficit? And we are about 3.8 million with a negative deficit. And that's basically because I'm looking at the team over here, I think about 10 years, BGS did not increase the rate for postal services. And that started creating, because we were trying to be kind and friendly and do it for less when it cost us more. And that created the deficit.
So you have like an internal service fund that you do for mail?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For 5 pieces of mail, or just like some other measurement? Are you actually counting each letter that you're?
I think they do count each letter, yeah.
So we did increase the rates in 2016? 21, oh, okay, 21.
Yeah.
And so we're working on that 3.8 negative to bring it down, and we're currently at the rate of any postage.
It's a percentage above the federal rate.
Percentage above the federal rate.
So now the rates will increase
Right,
as the federal rate increases.
You indexed it to the federal rate. Center West.
So given where we are, what's the timetable? If it's been since 2001 and that's 4 years, when will we, and where are they in that process?
So that is a great question. So when do we predict or project the deficit to be gone? I don't know. Do you?
I don't think the deficit will ever be gone. I think what we're doing is not creating any more of a deficit. Because now we're charging for what it actually costs us to run the program, but to reduce that deficit would take some sort of surcharge. That would have to be an agreement between the administration and, the legislature, so.
Yeah.
Do you want to go from there, or?
You read my mind. That was my question, and
It'll be like those
I
other,
don't like the answer.
those capitalized debt, what do we call them? Capitalized debt appropriations.
Last
It was-
fiscal year, it was $100,000 was put towards the deficit.
Yeah. So,
What was that?
yeah, 100,000 was.
Last year they put $100,000 towards the deficit.
No, well, the revenue that was brought in, that was generated,
It bought it down by 100.
100,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 38 years from now, we might be down to, okay?
Yeah, I see it more similar to what happened with the property management fund where, there was money appropriated to pay down that deficit, so.
And not to be, not to be negative, and then if you look at the performance measures, you're gonna see there's a significant decrease.
Right, so
That's right, that we've been dealing with, so that will,
It eliminated a position.
with the deficit, if we're delivering less mail, then we're gonna have less to contribute to the deficit.
you're doing better than the federal post office.
Oh, thank you.
Well,
Except for Montpelier, I only get my mail once a week.
That's what I'm saying, you're doing it better. You should deliver the Montpelier mail.
I keep thinking, I forget you don't live in Montpelier anymore.
No, but I hear it from those constituents, that they're
Yes,
not
you
happy
do.
about the US Postal Service.
But ultimately, before this thing goes out, in the direction we're moving, there will be no mail. Or almost none.
Because Can we be creative on that next year?
No, I'm not, I'm just saying.
You could take over email.
Yeah, try. Okay, moving
Okay,
on.
so moving right along, the next is our print shop. This is a $1.1 million budget, 3% increase over 25. We have 11, FTEs. We operate 6 to 6. We used to have a third, 6 AM to 6 PM. We used to have a third shift, especially during the legislative session, so we could produce everything that was coming from here, but, you know, working with the team, in this building, we have a process in place that we don't have to run that third shift. And we've modernized how things are brought to us, how we receive them in the print shop, so that's been very, efficient. Two of our biggest customers is DMV, well, I should say 3, DMV, tax, and labor. I think for those of you that are serving on the transportation committee, all of the registrations, the renewals, any of that communication, it's a file that goes to the print shop from DMV, and then it's printed, stuffed, and sent to the customer. You know, the same for tax, and I think the same for labor. And really, you know, we manage the copier lease program from this division as well. And as I understand it, that provides significant savings to departments.
Yeah.
Questions? So fleet management. Fleet management, we have a $1.2 million budget. This is a mix of internal service and interdepartmental transfers. It's an 8.7% increase over 25. The increase, again, is due to the staffing costs, and I should say, as you all know, the interdepartmental transfers, we don't control. You know, those are the, not the interdepartmental, the internal service, we don't control those. So, you know, that's part of this budget as well. I like to, I think what's really interesting about this data, and it came up before, is how many vehicles are there in the program? Because I think people, I know just recently we had delivery of many new vehicles and they were parked down at Green Mountain Drive. And I know that your constituents and Vermonters were like, what is the state doing with all of those new cars? Mm-hmm. But that was a scheduled buy, it was a plan to distribute them out. Of the 638 vehicles, 48 vehicles are available statewide for daily rentals. 590 vehicles are permanently assigned to departments. And then of that inventory, we have 299 alternative fuel vehicles. And 283 are hybrid, 13 are battery, and 3 are plug-in. And one of the things that I learned, and I just want to share, we do an assessment where basically the fleet program is on a 2-year cycle, and Harvey's going to correct me if I'm wrong. And so we do an assessment with all of the departments. We tell them what their use is, what the cost is in the first year, and we give them the opportunity, we give them the data for them to analyze and assess. Do they want to keep the number of vehicles they have? Is it worth them putting more vehicles into their fleet? And they have that time, they agree to that or they adjust that plan, and then the following year we bill based on that usage. Did I get that correct? And it's really a wonderful, this was new to me, and just, I don't remember, but just how we're working with departments really to make it affordable. So their cost is over a 2-year period, really their cost is reduced annually because of how we are doing the assessment. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, their usage, so they pay monthly for the vehicle, but then every 2 years, we look at their usage and bill them any additional that they went above and beyond the miles that they had agreed to pay for.
I haven't set any new performance standards with this program yet, members of the committee, as far as alternative vehicles, because we haven't had real time to discuss and get into any
I'm
detail.
hoping on transportation though.
Okay.
You bring up anything you want.
So any questions on fleet? Okay, the next one is surplus property. I think many of you may be familiar with this program, and surplus property is a $545,000 budget. It's a 2.9% increase. We have 2 full-time positions there, and we manage and distribute and dispose of state property. One of our biggest annual processes is the sale of fleet vehicles. So all of those are sold at the auction. But under, one of the things that I was really impressed with that I just want to share is we've entered into some waiver agreements where we have programs in the state of Vermont. And Harmony, I think you may have started this, but where we have individuals who need vehicles, we have a program where we're actually instead of selling them, working with those entities to get them back on the road for affordable use.
Correct, we have an MOU with Reach Out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
been going on for a while.
Yeah, and I was really impressed with that, and it's utilized. Yeah.
What's your total revenue from the surplus property? It's like do you have that?
I can look on, yep.
Will it take us a second? That's not on this.
No.
Cause you also still,
And it fluctuates here.
Right.
Yeah,
just depend on like a
What we
car
get.
year, yeah.
yeah.
And are you selling the confiscated things from the airport still? Does that go through this? surplus?
I don't
Or
think
is that somebody else did
I
that?
think that's somebody else.
No,
Yeah.
that was
Is it?
us, but there was a point in time where we had pictures of all of the knives and everything.
Yeah.
I think,
I don't think it's us anymore.
I don't
You don't do
think
that
it's-
anymore?
No, I will confirm, this program's really advanced, we have the location, but they do a lot of their business online.
Mhm.
And they are still supporting municipalities quite significantly.
Right, yes, Center Brothers.
Except, well, the online, I get those emails.
You do?
Yeah, I do.
And there's some interesting stuff in there, but the sharps are still in there.
Yeah,
Well, then,
all the little.
it could be
Swiss Army
leftovers. I will follow up on that though,
They do have sharps, they get it delivered from the airport periodically.
oh, they do,
Cause I have
knives.
friends that are into knives that rely on that as their,
online.
but if that one bill passes that allows switchblades, then maybe. we're not-
Automatic opening knives, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah, no. they-
Utility knives.
Yeah.
Utility knives.
Then you're okay. Actually, this is, never mind. I did have a second part of the
Okay.
question. Are the auctions that were down at Central Garage totally separate from this auction? Or is that the same?
No, we do that in, the transportation, with the transportation vehicles. We actually work with them, and I know this more from my DMV, because DMV is always helping them sign off on titles, when we're doing it. So I know one of those, and I'm looking at Harmony again, because she works in that division. I know one of those auctions is a combination with AOT. I don't think both are.
The physical auction,
Yeah,
they only have one physical auction.
and then the other auctions are online.
Yes, all managed by the same auction company, Auctions International,
But the revenue collected is
distributed.
distributed to the owner of,
The property?
yeah, so we oversee the auction and the contract with that, and manage that on site. But I will tell you, AOT it brings in the bulk of money because of their inventory that they're selling.
Okay. It must be a little confusing because I've seen everything at the physical auction, trucks, cars, boats, canoes, tree stands from Parks and Forest and Parks, whatever.
When they had it down at Central Garage.
Yeah, when they had it in Central Garage, so, and that gets distributed.
It goes, the revenue, the sales goes to there's a cost that we
Yeah.
charge everyone for the auction, and then those revenues go to the individuals,
To the department.
to the
To the
departments,
department,
not
okay.
right, to the individual departments.
Yep.
Okay,
Okay,
Back to you on the revenue versus
Yep.
cost. I'm looking at the.
And-
it's not jumping out at me.
moving right along, planning and property management. This is where we do our planning and we manage all of our leases. It's a $1.8 million. We also, run the energy office out of this program, which has 5 full-time equivalent positions. So this is the MERP and all of those grant funds that I think you're familiar with. We have a 15% decrease, and the decrease is due to moving positions. And if you go to, and other costs associated, but we moved 2 positions to design and construction, which was on an earlier slide, which is like a 10.5% increase. So it's not a apple to apple, but we decreased here and increased in that one. So it's taking existing positions, shifting the funding.
are you still trying to sell 210 State Street? Maybe I'd move down to your, is
210,
it 210? The corner next to,
yes, so right now we have 3 properties, I believe, Senator, in Montpelier that are for sale. We have 2 on Baldwin Street, which we may have an active, and we have this property. They're not,
yeah, it's a weird
well,
Got it.
you're in a historic district.
historic building, no parking, but it's still the plan to sell.
Yes, and I mean, to my knowledge it is, but I will follow, if my information is incorrect, I will let you know.
Okay.
And the one question that comes up with this that I just want to share, and you may know this, everyone says, what's the difference between property management and fee for space? And this is all of our lease, and fee for space is all of our state owned.
Yeah,
And so let's go to the
We do
next.
have the total, revenue for surplus property last year was 5.9 million.
okay,
Wow.
yeah. Yeah, center line.
Do you do the leases for the ski areas? That's
No.
not yours, that's part of Forest Park and
Yeah.
Recreation.
We're leasing space for state agencies and departments or programs and services where we don't have state-owned facilities to put them in. Or we don't have a state building in an area, but we have state services there.
Okay.
So we saved, our largest, one for last, and that is, operations and maintenance, and this is fee for space. This is where, so we pay for operation and maintenance and staff for Division of Safety and Security. It's a $39.4 million budget, 3% increase over 2025. It is an accumulation of all of our funds that we use to pay for, this. We are experiencing in this program, the cost and the increase in insurance, retirement steps, COLAs, which we don't have a control, is the majority of that. Operation and maintenance is 215 full-time equivalent. And they are maintenance, custodial, and trades, so our HVAC specialists or our electricians. And this is where we talked about the 3 million, I talked about the 3 million square feet. I like, Cole, I don't know why while you're there, this is Cole's district. You know, I brought up the, maintenance districts, because this map shows how we're organized, so we have state facilities in all of these locations, and then staff assigned to them. And then within fee for space, and we don't show it on that, one of the questions in fee for space is, how do you set the rate? How do I know what my rate is? And so we look at the regional areas and what the actual cost of those facilities are, which are people, services, equipment, heating, fuel, all of that. And we disperse it based on the square footage that you occupy. And Montpelier and Waterbury and Barry are probably our largest ones at this point in time.
Yeah.
And And part of that, and just, I think it's, the history is so many of these, especially central locations like Barry and, or Waterbury, Montpelier, we've worked towards getting, separate, systems to measure and, meters, looking at you like you're reading my mind. And, so the cost is more affordable. There was a point in time before we went to fee for space, when we were trying to charge for actual use, had more of a negative impact on the budget. If fee for space at least distributes the cost, across.
Okay. Well, we have to move on to judiciary, but I did notice the vacancy savings in engineering at 330,000.
Yeah.
What, it doesn't high compared to all the other ones.
Yeah, and that, that's based off of the positions that we currently have vacant there, so, and that was necessary in order to make that budget, meet the,
So you just like keeping those positions open?
I mean, that's gonna be
Well, we're advertising, that's the one area, Senator, that, we're not getting, it's difficult for us to get qualified candidates that want to be project managers, because for what work is out in the private industry, they're making more money. And that's part of that slide where we're trying to realign and prioritize, because we're getting this capital money and you all want us to get these projects done. But we've got to really have the appropriate staff to get them out and to manage that.
Okay. Anything else you wanted to tell us?
No.
Okay, any other questions for the BGS folks? Okay.
See you in transportation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I did see Terry and Harley. Did you leave? Okay. There's Terry.
Very great.
And someone may want to talk to me later. So I'll keep you updated.
How do you get overview so much from They push you over here, everybody else gets to stay.
Because the other team just wanted that text.
Gregor is already Kelly gonna. Yeah, that's great. Good job. Or who's gonna present, Kelly or Greg, or all three of you, or Terry?
Greg and I were going to,
Okay.
and then Kelly's remote and Marcia Shells is also remote.
Okay,
That's
great.
okay.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Yeah.
Would you like us to?
You can introduce yourself for the record. I assume you know who we are.
Yes, hi. Terry Purcell, State Court Administrator, and I'm joined by Greg Mosley, who's our Chief of Finance and Administration in the Judiciary, and Kelly Carbo, who's a Finance Program Manager in Finance and Administration, and Marcia Shells, who is the Chief Technology and Innovation Officer at the Judiciary. And I do have paper copies of both the memo and the PowerPoint slides, and also the up and down sheet, if that would be helpful to people.
I think some people might like them. I will look on my screen here.
Okay.
I'm good.
Okay, great, that's
Thank
fine.
you.
Memo and PowerPoint.
You could leave one for the pro tem if you want in here.
Oh, okay. He did mention he wasn't sure if he, no, it's just
yeah.
looking down. Would
Just
anybody
in
else
case.
like to? Sorry.
Will you go through the slides first, or?
Yes,
Yeah.
Greg will go through the slides. I think the memo is simply a narrative version of the information that's on the slides. And then the up and down.
Well, just keep coming and coming here.
And Greg will mostly be presenting all the information. And then our hope is that with Kelly and Marcia here, any questions that you might have, and Marcia in particular, because the bulk of the request in the FY26 proposal has to do with technology expenses. And Greg will also explain how the Budget Adjustment Act, which we were here testifying about earlier, how that interplays with the fiscal year 26 budget. But primarily it's an explanation of our fiscal year 25 general fund budget and then the differences between it and our request for this year. And we're pleased that the components of the fiscal year 26 proposal are in the governor's recommended budget. And with that, Greg is happy to go over the details.
Hey everybody, thank you for the opportunity to discuss our budget request. I can share my screen, I think. Not sure if that's working.
Well, we all have it.
Okay. So I'm just going to talk through the PowerPoint, but if there's questions on the ups and downs or the memo, I'm happy to address it that way as well. Our existing budget, our FY25 budget is $63.4 million. We do have a BAA request that's in process. It's $2.5 million and 2.1 of that is for technology expenses. The other piece of that is for Sheriff's COLA for this year. And then in addition, this request has $7 million, most of that being statewide pressures. So going through slide 3, which is essentially the ups and downs page, you can see that our pay after annualization is $3.2 million. There's a benefit increase of 1.7 and internal service funds increase of 457,000, which mostly is fee for space.
So on your slide 2, it says the request is 72,990, but the highlighted on 3 is 72,601.
Yeah, so the governor's recommend is 72,601, and
you're asking for more than the governor's.
That has to do with the budget adjustment. There's $300,000 in budget adjustment for the sheriff's COLA, which was not identified in the governor's recommend.
Okay, so but it's also in your FY26 request?
Yeah, well, it's
because it carries forward.
Yeah,
once you make that COLA.
It's because of the way we contract with the sheriff, so it's going to be an every year cost. Last year we didn't get anything for a increase for the sheriffs. We were not able to negotiate contracts at the flat rate, and so we had to sign contracts for it was about 3% increase. It's very equivalent to what the state employees receive. So we asked for that in the budget adjustment, and then for next year, it has about a 3% increase in it. So that's the statewide pressures. I can talk about the judicial specific pressures if there's no questions. I assume the statewide pressures you've seen many times.
We've seen a lot of that in internal service funds.
Yeah.
General benefit increases, back increases, health insurance, all that stuff.
Yeah, most of the benefit increases health insurance and retirement, and most of the internal service fund increases fee for space, which is the rent that we pay for state courthouses. It should be noted that that does not include the county courthouses. So we have we operate in some of the county-owned county courthouses, and the counties provide the courthouse free of charge to the judiciary.
In the security contracts, that's with the sheriff, that's the sheriff's and independent security?
There's one independent private contract for places where we can't get the sheriffs. And so most of that is sheriffs, and there's the one private firm. And the technology fund pressure you see there listed at 3.4 million. That takes some explanation because that's a multi-year problem that's being resolved. You probably know the special funds and the civil violation revenue is declining. It goes into a number of special funds, including ours. And we've seen that decline over the past 6 or 7 years. And at the same time, we had to expand our IT footprint because of COVID and remote hearings. And we also covered some of the expenses. I mean, I'd come here and explain what was happening every year, but the question was, is it a problem this year? And the answer was always no, it's some future year. That future year turned out to be FY25. We came here last year with a request that didn't get fully funded. We did get one-time contingent appropriation of $750,000 for this year to help us get through, but it's not in our base budget.
Was that part of the whole moving away from getting your service through ADS and taking it all in-house, or that was even the year before?
No, that was a different issue. That was a $4.6 million project last year that we completed. This is really our footprint increase because of remote hearings and all the equipment and licensing that goes along with it. At the same time, the revenue in the tech fund was going down.
And that's what we fixed and, well, helped with the BAA since you didn't have money in that fund.
Yeah, and we've been covering that through the COVID years with either pandemic money or year-end surplus of some kind. So this is a multi-year issue. If the BAA passes, it has 2.1 million in there for tech funds. So that 3.4 number changes. That would go down to 1.3 million. And that's depicted in the memo and slides. It's not depicted in the ups and downs spreadsheet. And of that 1.3 million, some of that is revenue replacement. The 750,000 of contingent one-time funds needs to be replaced. So that means that the actual increase in IT expenses from last year to this year is in the $500,000 range, five to 600,000. Everything else is either past year problem or revenue replacement. So I wanted to explain that because it doesn't, our IT expenses are not going up by $3 million a year.
That's good.
And the other judicial pressure is the security services COLA. And we discussed this at most of these sheriffs. We say security services because it does include one private company. And that's about a 3% increase.
Okay.
So the total, if the BAA passes, is only 1.5 million. Unfortunately, in the ups and downs, it counts everything, which is about a $9 million number. So just wanted to walk you through those numbers and make sure you understood what was going on with our special fund, with our IT budget, and with security.
Okay.
Moving on to the next slide, I just wanted to give a really quick overview of what we spend money on and where it comes from. So the fourth slide in the slide deck, the pie chart, basically shows you what we spend our money on. And you can see that 71% of that is spent on salaries and benefits for our staff. It's the people, the judges, and the judicial assistants that make the court operate. It's a very manual process, and so we have 23 courthouses throughout Vermont. We have about 360 permanent employees. And that's mainly what we spend the money on. The next biggest charge is fee for space. We pay about $6 million for the state courthouses. And the next biggest expense is security contracts. 6.7% of our total budget goes to the sheriff's or the private security. Our IT budget is 4.7%, and then everything else we do falls into the bucket here listed as everything else, which is about just under 9%. Everything else includes judicial specific programs like jury administration, guardian ad litem, interpreters, mediators, parent coordinators, but it also includes some of the more mundane business costs like postage, in-state mileage, conferences, things like that. So it really is a very small piece of our budget that we have discretion over. Okay. The next pie chart, slide number 5, actually has 2 pie charts on there. This is what where our funding comes from. So you can see in the larger pie chart, general funds is about 92% of our entire budget. We are essentially general funded. The next smallest part is there's a couple of small fees in there, environmental fee and a waste management fee. We get a very small piece of that helps support the environmental court. And then there's an inter-unit transfer fund, which makes up 3%. Most of that is, well, inter-unit transfer. So it's transfers from other parts of government, mostly AHS. And the big piece of that is the Title 4D child support funding. And everything else, the other category of 4%, is broken out in the smaller pie chart. We do have some federal funds, about 2% of our budget. Most of that is going for treatment courts. We also administer the attorney licensing profession and administer the bar exam. And there are fees associated with that. That brings in 1%. And the court technology fund that I had mentioned brings in about 1% of our revenue. Remember that I mentioned it's about 4% of our cost, so it doesn't self-fund itself anymore. Questions on where the revenue comes from? No. So the next slide, and this is not in the memo, but I thought I'd throw a slide in here about federal funding, just so you get a picture of that. There seems to be a lot of questions about what part of our budget is the federal funding. So I've listed all the different grants here that we get. The top section here, which makes up 2%, $1.5 million is really the treatment court grants. This amount on the slide is the annualized amount, so it's the yearly amount. Many of these are multi-year grants. Then the indirect federal funding is the interdepartmental transfers. There's a number of programs that we operate where we get the funding from another division of government, mainly AHS. But they get it from federal funds. So it is really federal funding. It's just one domino away. The biggest piece of that I mentioned is the Title 4D child support funding. It's about $2 million. You combine all of our federal dollars together, and it's about 5% of our budget. So about $3.9 million.
And so far, you haven't had any signs from the feds changes or?
No, we're in constant communication with our liaisons in the hopes of getting some clarification, but we haven't heard back definitively on any of them yet.
Yes, Senator Norris.
Yeah, would you know by chance, Greg, what the Center for Victims Services received last year?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay.
Center for
Crime Victim Services.
5,000. Yeah.
Oh, there it is. I don't know that it's changed very much, but I have to look that up.
Do you want
If
us
you
to
could, if you could, I'd
email you
appreciate that.
that?
Yes.
Okay. And I don't know if that's something Kelly can even look up quickly for us.
You can look at
Yeah, Terry. Hi, it's Kelly Carbo. Yeah, I can look that up. I won't be able to get it probably before this meeting ends.
Oh, okay, thank you, Kelly, and then we can email you.
Thank you. Okay. And that was it. That's a very quick summary of our budget and what we do with the funding and where it comes from. I thought I would just let you direct the questions and each path you want to go down.
And you're up and down, it's just the one page. It's just,
Yeah, it's just one page. Should look a lot like slide number 3 on a PowerPoint.
it looks different, but the same numbers.
Yeah, except for that small piece of the security services from BAA. And going forward, once this technology funding is resolved, our increases will probably come in our budget request every year. Same with the security services and the pay app. Those will probably be annualized increases because it's just the cost of living. And our IT is not part of the ADS request anymore. So ours will be separate. It should be a small amount, hopefully, 2% a year or less. But we are managing an independent network. It's got some redundancies so that we have not had any downtime. We've been able to improve the broadband capacity by doing new wiring, and we have Wi-Fi in all the courthouses for the attorneys to just plug into.
So we were very grateful to the legislature for funding. We moved to an independent network, and we were also very I'm gratified to be able to do it on time and on budget, thanks to like Marcia and her team working very hard. And it's made a world of difference because we don't have the screens freezing during a day with 60 arraignments going on in the courtroom. So it's been really great to have the reliability.
And that's helped with the backlog and just making everything run more efficiently.
Definitely has helped, as have the judicial appointments.
Good, right.
As of February 10th, it was the first time in years that we had all the judge bench slots filled. So we're really happy to be able to make as much progress as we possibly can now.
Great. Senator Lyman?
So looking at the drug court, and substance use programs that are available to the courts. We've been talking a lot about recovery in our committee, and I know that pretrial services are important, and also understand recidivism becomes important, relapse becomes important, and this is substance use programs, mental health programs as well embedded in that. How does all that work together for you? And what are you seeing as for sort of increased needs, or maybe access is a better
Right.
question?
Well, we have the 5 drug treatment courts around the state. And, one question is, why don't we have them in every county? Because there are advantages and benefits. Mainly it's been due to a lack of providers in every county.
So that's the question, and where, do you have an accounting of where the needs are, where the gaps are in each county?
We do, and actually through that mental health commission, Senator, that you've been so instrumental on, we've had the 2 regional workshops so far in the Northeast and Northwest, and scheduled in April and May of this year are the regional workshops in the Southeast, Southwest, and Chittenden. Where those gaps are being identified, and the hope is then, the other thing that's happening, and this is coming from monies that have been recommended, it's not finalized yet, and actually Dr. Levine is next, I see, the opioid monies we requested, and it's been recommended for $75,000 for training, so that judges can implement the treatment court strategies in all courts, whether there's a treatment court there or not. But the strategies to have incentives for people to be able to receive treatment as an alternative to incarceration or whatever. The SKIP grant that's listed here is the one that's actually funding the mental health coordinator, Scott Nikas, who's working to organize these workshops. So it is very integrated, and the hope is to be able to offer the benefits that both the substance treatment and the mental health treatment courts, there's one, we just have the one in Chittenden County, working towards diverting people who could benefit from the treatment as a way to hopefully get on the right path. That's the goal.
I know, it's always out there, right? Thank you.
The other big change, one of the new judge appointments from last year is Judge Kevin Griffin is now the statewide drug treatment or treatment court coordinator, judge dedicated to the treatment courts. So he's been going around and sitting on those courts, and I think already he's actually up for retention this year, and gave a great overview to the Judicial Retention Committee as to how that's going. And it really has proven to be identifying things that were done differently, so there's better standardization and kind of having best practices then in every one of them. So that's been a big plus just recently.
Good. Thank you.
Sure.
Anything else you wanted to tell us about?
I think that's the main.
I mean, you said that the technology transfer has gone well. The remote hearings are going well. There's been some news that has seemed that it hasn't been going well for everybody, but that's not a technological problem. That's just the issues with remote hearings.
Well, that and mostly the video arraignments that you're probably referring to the correctional centers, remote hearings. Greg can speak to at the correctional facilities. There have been enhancements to the Wi-Fi, to the wiring, to the larger screens, to facilitate, but there's still definitely a balance in terms of people coming in person, criminal defendants. And I know Judge Zone is working very much with Commissioner Demmel and state's attorneys, public defenders to make changes and try to, part of that is an increase in transports.
Right,
Is that
and lack of transport deputies.
right? So I think part of the hope is that there'll be an increase there. And then also personnel at the correctional facilities to help facilitate
Yeah,
the remote hearings and whether or not there can be a position dedicated to that.
right.
So I think they're working hard to try to address the issues that are still there.
Right.
There's been improvement, the quality
Good, yeah.
and all in the equipment itself, but there's still things to address.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Appreciate the information.
Our
Thank you very
pleasure.
much.
Thank you.
There's no line item for sundries or such as, like cookie dough or anything?